with socialists like Lawrence and Wishart, who needs capitalists? In the latest example of a phenomenon as old as the state itself, Stan McCoy, formerly the U.S. Trade Representative's chief intellectual property negotiator, who wrote the ACTA and the Trans-Pacific Partnership IP Charter, was just given a cushy job at the Motion Picture Association of America. He's one of over a dozen senior USTR officials who've moved to jobs at industry groups in the past year. This is why it's such a waste of time to devote serious effort and resources to working within the system to affect the form the law takes. Doing so amounts to fighting the enemy by the enemy's own rules, on ground favorable to the enemy, where the enemy has the advantage of a prepared defense. German blitzkrieg war theorists had a term, Schwerpunkt, for the decisive point at which an armored formation penetrated the enemy force's front lines, and then immediately bypassed the main body of the enemy's forces and cut them off and encircled them from the rear. John Robb, a leading theorist of networked fourth-generation warfare models, has coined the term Systempunkt for the analogous phenomenon in a networked conflict. In World War II, Allied strategic bombing campaigns over Germany destroyed entire infrastructures, one power station, power line, bridge, railroad, road, etc. at a time. They were unable to undertake the enormously costly task of destroying an entire physical infrastructure mile by mile because of their overwhelming air superiority and much larger industrial output. The concept of Systempunkt, on the other hand, is illustrated by Al-Qaeda's Iraq's practice of attacking only a few key nodes in an infrastructure, which, although amounting to 1% or less of the total physical infrastructure, disables and renders non-operational the other 99% left untouched. And that's a great deal more cost-effective. For the forces of information freedom and other movements associated with the successor economy, to attempt to fight the established interests on the existing system for control of the state is like an army trying to capture control of an entire infrastructure mile by mile. And to do so when, far from possessing material superiority, it is outnumbered 10 or 100 to 1 by the defending enemy, it's utterly stupid. We can render the corporate state inoperative, using maybe 1% of the resources required to actually capture the state through the political process, by attacking its ability to enforce the subsidies, privileges, and legal monopolies of big business. Enforcement capability is the Systempunkt of the state capitalist economy. The proprietary content industry and all the other businesses that make money by extracting rents from patents, copyrights, and trademarks will always control the intellectual property policy of the state. I mean, that's what the state exists for. Attempting to fight their money and political influence by the rules of the system would just be pouring resources down a rat hole. But for a tiny fraction of the same money and effort, we can turn patents and copyrights into a dead letter through strong encryption, proxy servers, torrent downloads, and moving web hosts to servers in countries that don't take orders from the MPAA and the RIAA. That's why the Center for a Stateless Society, the outfit I'm writing this for, is moving our sites to servers in Iceland. When the US government seized WikiLeaks' domain name, thousands of hosts around the world, C4SS among them, responded by mirroring the site. And many thousands of people blogged and tweeted the numeric IP address of WikiLeaks sites in various countries so people could look it up directly by IP address rather than using the domain name. Then, when the government carried out mass seizures of domain names of the alleged infringing sites on behalf of the music and movie industries, the Mozilla Foundation came up with Firefox browser extensions that would bypass the domain name blocks by automatically going straight to the numeric IP address. As Bruce Sterling put it, treating the law of the land as damage and routing around it. Now there is BitTorrent Sync, a utility which enables any two people who've installed it and know a common password to transfer torrents directly from one computer to another, with a secure end-to-end encryption. It's kind of like what happens when you use your cursor to move a file to the Dropbox icon, only the information's not stored at a permanent location in the cloud, and it's encrypted. It's a totally desktop-to-desktop, peer-to-peer file sharing system, so it doesn't matter if the Trans-Pacific Partnership or any other draconian copyright legislation passes. Any two people with BitTorrent sync who want to share a file can do so. Big Content has lost the war, once and for all. They're dead. They just don't know it yet. Which leads me to the latest interesting development. Lawrence and Wishart, a leftist publisher who owns the rights to the English-language edition of the enormous, over 50 volumes, Marx and Engels collected works, has demanded that the Marxist Internet Archive, an amazing online library that includes not only the collected works, but an astonishing collection of other writers ranging from Luxemburg and Gramsci to C.L.R. James and Walter Rodney, take down the Marx and Engels collected works by April 30th. Happy May Day, comrades. As anyone at all familiar with the web could have predicted, this led to a massive backlash of outrage from the left that Lawrence and Wishart were, naturally, unprepared for. On Friday, April 21st, their website published an utterly whiny complaint, Lawrence and Wishart's statement on the collected works of Marx and Engels, that they'd been subjected to a campaign of online abuse because they asked for their copyright sniff to be respected. Aside from the rather contemptible display of self-pity and entitlement, the statement reflects more than anything else an utter lack of business sense. Ultimately, in asking L&W to surrender copyrights in this particular edition of the works of Marx and Engels, Marx's Internet Archive, and their supporters are asking that L&W, one of the few remaining independent radical publishers in the United Kingdom, should commit institutional suicide. This is nonsense on stilts. The hard copy set of the collected works, if bought as a complete set instead of one volume at a time, sells for £1,500 British pounds, which is somewhere well north of $2,000. If Lawrence and Wishart can show one person anywhere in the world who put off shelling out over $2,000 for a set of the Dead Tree edition of the Marx and Engels collected works because a digital online edition was available, I will eat my own left hand, raw and without salt. The Marxist Internet Archive's online edition of the collected works is not costing Lawrence and Wishart a single solitary sale. The only thing the online edition is competing against is a trip to a university library. If anything, the online edition is free advertising for the Dead Tree edition. In other words, the Lawrence and Wishart is governed by the same abject stupidity as the music and movie industries, the dying music and movie industries. Not only is Lawrence and Wishart as stupid as the music and movie industries, its attempt to suppress free, infinitely replicatable digital information is turning out to be just as big a failure as those industries attempt to do so. No doubt the archive will be mirrored, with its existing content, at plenty of sites around the world, but in the meantime the entire English-language contents of the Marxist Internet Archive, including the disputed edition of Marx and Engels' collected works, is available for torrent download at Pirate Bay. And the collected works by themselves are available as a zip file at SendSpace. I've got a copy of the latter on my hard drive and it works just fine. The individual files open up in a browser tab and look exactly like the online version. I recommend anyone who expects to be at all interested in accessing the collected works online at any point in the future to download one of these files ASAP and share them with your friends far and wide via BitTorrent sync. Enjoy your copyright, Lawrence and Wishart, for all the good it may do you. I love the smell of burning capitalists in the morning. With socialists like Lawrence and Wishart, Who Needs Capitalists has been a feature article for the Center for a Stateless Society, written by Kevin Carson and read by James Tuttle.